I froze mid-sip when my grandpa raised his mimosa and said, "I'm so glad you're enjoying the apartment I got you. But I'd been living in a basement for years, no windows, next to a boiler." That moment cracked open a vault of family lies, stolen money, and a betrayal so deep it would shatter everything I thought I knew about loyalty, legacy, and love. The clink of silverware against porcelain was the only sound as sunlight poured through the tall windows of Le Jardin, the upscale brunch spot my family adored for birthdays and celebrations. Fresh lilies adorned the center of the long table, the scent mingling with the tang of fresh orange juice and buttered pastries. I swirled my mimosa in slow circles, watching the bubbles rise to the surface and vanish. The world outside shimmered with spring warmth, but inside me, a cold unease stirred, the kind that you ignore for years until it coils too tight to pretend it doesn't exist. Grandpa leaned back in his chair, a beaming smile plastered across his weathered face. "My girl," he said, raising his glass, "I'm so glad you're enjoying the apartment I got you. You deserve it." The words sliced the air. Everything around me stilled. I felt the mimosa scorch down my throat as if I'd swallowed fire. Eyes turned toward me, my mother's glossy lips parted in confusion, my sister's phone slipped slightly in her hands, and my father's fork dropped with a clatter onto his plate. My heart thundered in my ears. The truth was out, and the lie was ready to suffocate us all. I set my glass down gently, forcing calm into my fingers, wiping my napkin slowly across my lap. Then I lifted my eyes and met Grandpa's, trying to steady my voice. "I live in a basement." His smile twitched, then faltered altogether. "What? I never got any apartment," I said, louder this time. The silence turned solid. I could feel the weight of it pressing against my ribs. "What are you talking about?" Grandpa asked, his voice suddenly brittle. I stared straight ahead. "You never sent me anything, Grandpa." It wasn't pity that filled the room, not yet. It was a confusion. My family had grown comfortable ignoring my struggle, so long as I didn't name it out loud. But now the veil was slipping. "I've been living in a windowless basement for years," I said. "The only gift I've gotten from this family in a decade was silence." Across the table, Dad shifted in his seat. My mother blinked like someone had snapped a rubber band against her wrist. My sister had stopped chewing. Grandpa's chair creaked as he pushed back slightly, stunned. "I wired the down payment to your dad 4 years ago. He told me he surprised you with it after graduation." My blood ran cold. The room, the faces, the noise, everything spun just a little out of rhythm. I could barely breathe, but I didn't cry. Dad's face turned the color of chalk. "She said she didn't want help," he muttered. "She was trying to be independent." I looked at him, and for the first time, I saw the truth he'd carefully hidden behind every disappointed sigh, every lecture about working harder. "No," I said. "I asked you for help. I asked for a job lead once, and you told me to try flipping burgers first." I turned to Grandpa, my voice flat. "He kept the money. He told me to stop expecting handouts while he was spending my future." The gasp from my aunt was sharp, involuntary. Someone's hand knocked over a glass, and the orange juice bled across the white tablecloth. Grandpa sat back, pale and rigid. "Daniel," he said quietly to my father, "is this true?" My dad didn't speak. Mom reached for her coffee, her hands trembling. My sister glanced at her phone again, like this scene might vanish if she just ignored it long enough. I stood. The floor felt uneven beneath me, like the world was realigning under my feet. I wasn't going to say anything today, but since we're all here, pretending this is a family, maybe it's time we stop pretending. Then I turned and walked out. Behind me, chairs scraped, footsteps fumbled. I didn't care. Rage surged inside me, not just from the betrayal, but from all the quiet years I spent questioning if my failures were my own fault. I stepped into the cool air of the parking lot, the sun glaring off the asphalt. The spring breeze couldn't cool the fire in my lungs. My throat burned from holding back years of truths no one wanted to hear. "Kayla, wait!" I turned. Grandpa jogged toward me, slower than usual, as if the weight of what he'd just learned had aged him a decade in minutes. There was no smile now, just grief. You seriously never got the apartment? He asked. No, I said. I've been renting a basement from a woman who chain smokes so much the walls have turned yellow. I sleep next to a boiler. I pay rent in cash because she doesn't believe in banks. I eat dinner on the floor. There's no dining table. He blinked, trying to process. But your father told me you didn't want help. I asked him for help once, I said, voice cold. And he told me I should learn to be grateful. A flicker of pain crossed Grandpa's face. He said you were living in your dream place and didn't even thank him. I laughed bitterly. There was nothing to thank him for. He looked down. His hand trembled at his side. I trusted him. I know, I said. I did too. The pause between us was heavy, but not hostile. Shared betrayal sits differently. I want to fix this, he said. How? I asked. I want to see where you live. I narrowed my eyes. Why? Because if it's as bad as you say, and I believe it is, then he stole from both of us. And I'm done letting anyone lie to me. That night, we stood in front of the crumbling steps that led down to the basement I called home. I flicked on the porch light above us. It buzzed and sputtered. Grandpa said nothing as I unlocked the door and stepped aside. The smell of mildew and stale smoke crept into his nose. He hesitated for a breath, then walked in. Welcome to my palace, I said dryly. He looked around at the second-hand couch with a rip in the arm, the ceiling stained from a leak that never got fixed, the leaning bookcase I found on the street corner, and the cot I called a bed, wedged between the boiler and the washing machine. He sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress sagged beneath him. This is what you've been living in, he whispered. I nodded. Since college ended. He stared at the ceiling like he couldn't believe this was real. He said he was saving the rest for your wedding. Grandpa said at last. There is no rest. You gave him $70,000. It disappeared the minute it hit his account. He looked me in the eye. Not anymore. Then he stood. Tomorrow, he said, we're going to the bank. And to the lawyer. I woke up the next morning to the smell of burnt coffee and the sound of Grandpa's voice on the phone. I don't care if it's Sunday, Howard, he said. Find the paperwork. Every transfer. Every cent. And I want a letter drafted. Daniel Whitmore is no longer authorized to act on my behalf in any financial matter. Effective immediately. His voice was ice. It wasn't the firm scolding tone I remembered from childhood. This was different. He had snapped, and not out of anger, out of something deeper. Disgust. I didn't interrupt. I stood barefoot in the hallway, wrapped in a hoodie, listening. Something inside me, something small and quiet and long dormant, stirred. By noon, we were in a sleek downtown office with paneled walls and the quiet hum of air conditioning. Grandpa had pulled strings. The banker, a professional woman in a navy suit, clicked away at her screen. I do see the transfer, she said, adjusting her glasses. From Mr. Whitmore's account to Daniel Whitmore. It's marked as a gift for Kayla's condo. Then, she clicked again, another transfer appeared. 5 days later, the entire amount was moved into a private investment account under Dad's name. No mention of me. No reference to a condo. Just a redirect. Just theft. My hands curled into fists in my lap. Grandpa stared at the screen. Then, calmly, can I get a printed copy of that? Yes, sir, the banker said. As she left the room, Grandpa turned to me. He betrayed you. And he lied to me. This isn't just a family argument, Kayla. This is fraud. I looked at him. Don't worry, he said. I'll handle it, but I shook my head. No, I said. We'll handle it. The sun hadn't even begun to set when we pulled into my parents' driveway. I hadn't seen this house in years, the white trim colonial where I'd once drawn chalk unicorns on the sidewalk, where birthdays were marked with balloons and store-bought cakes, and where, in my last visit, my belongings had been boxed up and left on the lawn like garbage. It still looked the same. The porch light hung crooked, the flower beds were a little overgrown, but the windows gleamed, polished, proper, like everything inside was held together by ritual and reputation. Grandpa cut the engine. His hands rested on the steering wheel for a long moment before he spoke. You ready? I nodded. We walked to the front door together. Grandpa rang the bell. Footsteps approached fast, confused. My father opened the door. His brow furrowed the moment he saw both of us. He glanced past Grandpa and caught my eye. His expression flickered surprise, discomfort, maybe guilt. It vanished just as quickly. "We need to talk," Grandpa said. "I'm kind of busy right now, sit down." The words were soft, but there was no mistaking the command in them. Grandpa didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Mom hovered behind Dad, her hair pinned back too tightly, as if she'd been expecting company but hoped they'd cancel. She looked at Grandpa, then at me, reading the tension like a dropped glass mid-shatter. "Come in," she said quickly, stepping aside. I followed Grandpa into the living room. Everything was just as I remembered: the leather couch that squeaked under weight, the antique cabinet filled with crystal glasses no one used, the framed family photos arranged with mathematical symmetry. My sister peeked down from the staircase, phone in hand, curiosity flickering in her eyes like a predator sniffing out blood. We sat. Grandpa placed a thick manila folder on the coffee table between us. It landed with a thump. Dad didn't even glance at it. Grandpa folded his hands. "You told me Kayla was living in the apartment I bought for her." Dad shifted. "I did what I thought was best. You took the money. You stole it. You lied to your daughter. You lied to me." Dad gave a weak chuckle. "Come on, Dad. You're blowing this out of she's been living in a basement." Grandpa snapped, his voice sharpening. "Eating off the floor. Working 2 jobs while you invested in her future." Mom inhaled sharply. "Daniel, what is he talking about?" Dad's jaw clenched. "I was holding it for her. For later. Her wedding. Her future." "Don't." I cut in. "Don't lie again." He looked at me then. Not like a father. Not even like a man trying to explain himself. He looked like someone cornered. The kind of man who had always spoken with confidence because he never thought anyone would challenge him. "You told me I was lazy," I said, my voice calm even. "You told me I didn't deserve help. Meanwhile, you were padding your portfolio with money Grandpa gave me." Grandpa opened the folder and pulled out the bank documents. Printed transfers, dates, highlighted amounts. "I've already spoken to my lawyer," he said. "We can press charges if it comes to that. But I'd prefer we resolve this now. You'll repay every cent." Dad stared at the papers but didn't touch them, and Grandpa added, "You'll explain yourself in front of the family. No more pretending you're a noble father. At the next brunch, you'll read this." He pulled a folded sheet from his jacket and laid it in front of Dad. Out loud. Mom looked between the 2 men, her lips trembling. "Daniel, tell me this isn't true." My father said nothing. "I trusted you with my granddaughter's future," Grandpa said quietly. "And you turned it into a secret account." Still, Dad said nothing. The only sound was the faint whir of the ceiling fan above us. After a long silence, Grandpa stood. "Kayla will be moving in with me next week. I've already spoken to the realtor. We'll find her a proper place." I stood too. My gaze met my father's one last time. I searched for something in him: regret, sorrow, shame, but there was only a hollowness, like someone who had spent too long rehearsing a version of reality that served only himself. He didn't speak. He didn't even look away. And for the first time in my life, his silence didn't hurt. Back at Grandpa's house, I collapsed onto the guest bed, the soft mattress a revelation after years of sleeping on coils and plywood. A quiet hum of peace wrapped around me like a blanket. I could breathe here. I could think. Later that evening, as Grandpa poured himself a scotch and I brewed tea, he glanced at me over the rim of his glass. "You never asked for anything," he said. "All those years I just assumed I was done asking." I said, "I figured if no one was going to show up, I'd stop giving them the chance to disappoint me." His shoulders sank a little. "I should have checked in. I assumed you were okay." "I know," I said. "You weren't the only one." He nodded slowly. "You won't have to do it alone anymore." For the first time in a long time, I believed it. The following Sunday, we returned to Le Jardin. Same restaurant. Same table. Same faces. Different energy. I wasn't squeezed into the corner this time. I sat beside Grandpa at the head of the table. A seat that, symbolically or not, meant everything. The family buzzed with shallow chatter at first, something about my cousin's trip to Italy, my uncle's new golf clubs, but everyone knew something was coming. The air tasted of it. When my father entered the room, still, he looked like a man deflated, his shoulders hunched, his skin grayish. Mom walked beside him, her face unreadable. My sister trailed behind, sunglasses still on indoors. Grandpa stood before anyone could fake small talk. "I'm going to keep this short," he said. His voice carried across the room like a cracked bell. "I've invited everyone here because last week I discovered a betrayal. 4 years ago, I sent money to help Kayla begin her life after graduation. I was told she received it, that she was thriving, that she had found a beautiful place to live." He turned toward me. "That was a lie." A hush dropped over the table. Grandpa's voice didn't tremble. "Daniel took the money. He hid it, invested it under his name. And then, for 4 years, he let Kayla suffer not just financially, but emotionally. He made her feel unworthy, ungrateful, lazy." Aunt Margot gasped. My cousin choked on her mimosa. My uncle adjusted his cufflinks awkwardly. He told her, Grandpa continued, that asking for help was weakness. He made her feel like a burden while he lived comfortably off the funds I gave her. Then Grandpa laid the letter on the table in front of Dad. "Read it," he said. Dad didn't move. "Now." Hands shaking, Dad picked up the paper. His voice cracked as he began. "To my family, I stole from my daughter, Kayla Whitmore. I took funds meant for her future and lied about their purpose. I have wronged her, my father, and the integrity of this family. I accept full responsibility and will pay back the full amount within 6 months. I am deeply sorry." He lowered the letter. No one spoke. No one clapped. The silence was not shocking. It was cleansing. Finally, Grandpa turned to the rest of the family. "Daniel will no longer have access to my estate. All assets and trusts are being restructured. Every financial link has been severed." He sat down slowly. And with that, it was done. That evening, back at Grandpa's house, we sat on the porch. The stars shimmered faintly overhead. "You deserve better," Grandpa said softly. "I just want to live in a place where the light gets in," I said. "I found one," he replied. "Lightwood floors, big windows, downtown. Yours if you want it." I looked at him, unsure if I could accept something like that. "You deserve to stop surviving," he added. "It's time to start living." And for once, I didn't argue. The first night in the new apartment felt like waking up in a different life. No pipes moaned behind my head, no mildew on the walls, just a clean, sun-warmed room and the skyline in the distance. I brewed coffee and watched a sunrise, wrapped in a real blanket on a real bed, feeling like I had finally stepped out of the shadow I'd been cast into. That day, I pulled out an old laptop from storage. I charged it, opened the designs folder I'd hidden for years, and stared at sketches I once dreamed would become my career. The drawings were raw but honest. Floor plans, color maps, renderings, ideas that had lived in me long before shame and exhaustion buried them. That night, I launched a website. I called it Reclaim, because I wasn't just rebuilding. I was reclaiming everything that had been stolen: money, time, dreams, and next would come something else, something unexpected, but that story was just beginning. It started with an email. Subject line: interested in collaboration. Reclaim. The sender: Jonah R. Principal, Urban Core Studios. The name didn't register at first. I clicked the message out of curiosity, expecting spam or some generic contractor offer, but the body of the message made me pause. "Hi Kayla. My name is Jonah Reynolds. I'm the creative director and co-founder of Urban Core Studios, a community-first architecture firm based in the city. We recently came across your design portfolio through a freelance network, and your Reclaim project caught our attention, especially your adaptive reuse concepts for small spaces. We're starting a community housing initiative next quarter and think your perspective could be invaluable. Would you be open to a meeting next week to discuss potential collaboration? Warm regards, Jonah." He reread it 3 times. He wasn't offering feedback. He was offering a seat at the table. I met Jonah that Friday afternoon in a glass-walled office in the city's art district. He was tall and unassuming, with quiet, perceptive eyes and an easy confidence that made me feel seen without being examined. He wore a charcoal button-up and scuffed brown boots, and when he smiled, it was the kind that belonged to someone who built things with care. "Kayla," he said, shaking my hand, "thanks for coming in." His office was filled with sketches taped to the wall, scale models of tiny homes on the shelves, and a whiteboard filled with equations and messy handwriting. I sat across from him at a long wooden table, feeling nervous and electric all at once. "I've read a lot of design portfolios," Jonah said, "but yours felt personal." "It was," I said. "Every square inch came from lived experience." He nodded slowly. "You design spaces that feel like survival but look like possibility." My heart stirred. We spent an hour reviewing my work, and another two talking through their new community build a low-income apartment project in an old post office downtown, designed to prioritize light, airflow, and dignity. Dignity. That word hit me like a soft hammer, and then out of nowhere he asked, "Why now?" I blinked. "What do you mean? You have the talent, but there's a gap in your timeline. You launched your site recently, but your designs date back years. Why the delay?" I hesitated. No one had asked me that. Not even Grandpa. I looked at Jonah. Saw no judgment, only genuine curiosity. "My father made me feel like my work was childish," I said finally. "He told me it was cute. Then he stole my college fund and called me entitled. So I scrubbed floors instead of sketching." Jonah leaned back. He didn't speak right away. Then he said, "And yet, you kept those designs." I nodded. "I guess part of me refused to give up." He smiled. "Good. That's the part I want to work with." By the end of the meeting, I had a short-term contract. 3 months. Design support. Flexible hours. A real paycheck and a seat at the table. When I got home, Grandpa was reading on the balcony. I dropped the papers on his lap. He stared at the offer letter, then at me. "They saw what I almost forgot." I whispered, "You never forgot." He said, "You just needed a place to remember." Working with Jonah was like stepping into a part of myself I didn't know had survived. He didn't talk down to me or over-explain. He asked questions that made me think and challenged me without patronizing. We had lunch in messy back rooms and sketching sessions that stretched into the evenings. Sometimes we'd argue about materials or lighting, but he always listened, and every time I doubted myself, he'd say something like, "Don't scale it down just because life tried to." That line stayed with me. One late Thursday night, we sat across from each other at the design table, surrounded by half-finished models and scattered prints. Jonah was sketching quietly, his sleeves rolled up, ink smudged on his fingers. The golden light from the desk lamp made the room feel softer, like a pocket of stillness in the chaos of life. He looked up suddenly. "Can I ask you something personal?" I nodded, unsure. "Is your dad still in your life?" I hesitated. "Not really. We haven't spoken since the letter. Do you want to?" I stared at my hands. I used to want an apology. Now, I'm not sure what I'd do with one. He was quiet, then said gently, "Sometimes closure is just a clean break." I looked at him. His eyes didn't push. They just stayed with me, and something shifted. I felt safe. A few days later, we finished our pitch deck for the Urban Shelter Board. We presented together. He introduced me as lead spatial strategist, and I felt a flicker of pride like I'd never known. The board approved the first phase of funding, and we walked out of the meeting laughing like kids who had stolen time and made it work. Outside the building, he turned to me. "Want to celebrate? Like, now?" He grinned. "There's a rooftop bar 3 blocks from here." We went. The view was ridiculous. The skyline glittered, and soft jazz floated through the night air. We clinked glasses, ate overpriced sliders, and talked about everything except architecture. I learned he'd been married once, briefly, years ago. She was a sculptor. It didn't end in fire, just slow drift. I told him about Grandpa, about the way I used to dream of design school, and how that dream got shelved behind bills and bruises. He listened carefully. No pity, just presence. The night deepened. So did the silence between us. Comfortable, curious. I caught him watching me as I sipped my drink. What? I asked. You're different than most designers I've met, he said. You design like someone who knows what it's like to be overlooked. I smiled faintly. That's because I do. He leaned in slightly. I don't think you'll ever be overlooked again. That night, I stood in front of my apartment window, the city glowing below, my mind spinning not with anxiety, but with wonder. And that's when I noticed it. A white envelope was tucked beneath my front door. No postage. No return address. Just my name. Kayla in shaky, all caps handwriting. I crouched, picked it up slowly. Inside, a single piece of paper, typed, Kayla, you may think you've escaped the damage your father caused, but not everything is over. He isn't the only one who's been hiding things from you. Some legacies are heavier than you realize. A friend me breath caught. I turned the envelope over again. No clues. I scanned the hallway. Empty. My heart thudded. Was this a threat? A warning? A trick? What else had been hidden from me? I locked the door and backed away slowly. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, and I realized the fight wasn't over. It was just evolving, and someone didn't want me to win. I didn't sleep that night. The envelope sat on my kitchen counter like a loaded weapon. I reread the note at least 30 times, searching for clues. The font, the tone, the strange use of the word legacy. It wasn't from my father. That much I felt sure about. It wasn't his style. He preferred silence or superiority, not whispers, but it meant someone was watching. Someone knew, and someone wasn't finished. The next morning, Jonah called. I found something weird, he said. At the records office, my heart kicked. What kind of weird? Your name was listed on an asset deed from 2001, under your grandfather's estate. It was marked as pending trust. That doesn't make sense. I was 7. Exactly. We met at the city records building an hour later. He looked serious. A man used to structure suddenly shaken by a crack in the foundation. He handed me a folder. I opened it slowly. There it was. My name. Kayla Whitmore. The property listed was a small parcel on the city's east end, an old converted brownstone, once used as a community center. The trustee, Margaret Whitmore, my grandmother, she set up a transfer before she died, Jonah explained. But it never went through. It was blocked. Blocked by who? He hesitated. Your father. My breath caught. I hadn't thought about her in years. Grandma Margaret. She died suddenly when I was 8. Heart failure, they said. I remembered her garden. The way she used to slip me tiny folded notes in the mail, shaped like animals. She once told me I was made of stars and soft iron. She always smelled like lavender and earth. She left me something? I whispered. She tried. Jonah said. But the records show Daniel Whitmore filed an override after she passed. Claimed she was mentally compromised at the time of the draft. My knees wobbled. I sat down hard. All these years, my father hadn't just stolen money. He'd stolen history, memory, a piece of love that had been meant for me. And the more I thought about it, the more the note made sense. He isn't the only one hiding things from you. My mother. That night, I called her. We hadn't spoken much since the brunch confession. Her voice sounded thin, tired. Mom, I said, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. A long pause. Go ahead. Did Grandma leave me something? Silence. Mom? Yes, she said finally. She tried to. Why didn't I ever know? Another pause. Because your father stopped it. And I didn't fight him. I felt something inside me splinter. She had concerns. My mom continued quietly. She didn't trust how your dad was managing the family finances. She set up a side trust for you, something small, but independent. She planned to tell you when you turned 16. And then she died. I finished, yes. And your father found the paperwork. He told me it was illegal, that it would be a scandal, that it wasn't worth the family embarrassment. And I let him convince me. I sank deeper into the couch. The world spinning again. I'm sorry, Kayla. I was weak. No, I said. You were afraid. But I'm not anymore. The next morning, Grandpa met me outside the brownstone. The building was old but proud, brick still strong, ivy curling at the edges. A plaque out front read, Whitmore Community Garden in Center Est. 1982. Your grandmother ran this place for 20 years, Grandpa said quietly. She hosted art classes, shelter nights, fan-dude drives. And she wanted me to have it, I whispered. He nodded. She saw something in you. She always did. My fingers brushed the cool brass of the plaque. I closed my eyes. I could almost hear her humming. Let's get it back, I said. Grandpa smiled. The legal process was grueling. Jonah helped me connect with an estate attorney specializing in contested trusts. We filed a motion to revisit Margaret Whitmore's estate. The original will was found in the archives, and the signature was verified. The key clause left ownership of the brownstone to my granddaughter, Kayla, who I trust will turn this place into light again. The court proceedings were ugly. My father contested the authenticity, argued about her mental state, and even tried to paint me as unstable. But the truth had its gravity. 2 weeks in, the judge ruled, transfer of ownership restored to Kayla Whitmore. We celebrated at Jonah's studio that night. I brought sparkling cider. He brought takeout and pulled 2 paint-stained stools next to a stack of blueprints. We toasted over noodles, to legacies. I said, to reclamation. He replied, then his hand brushed mine. And he didn't move it. Later, he walked me home. We stopped beneath the sycamore outside my building. He hesitated. I know things are complicated right now, he said, but if I didn't say this, I'd regret it. I looked up. I like you, Kayla, he said. I respect you, and I'd like the chance to see where this goes. I didn't answer right away, but I didn't step back either. I leaned in close enough to smell ink and coffee on his collar. Then don't wait, I whispered, and he kissed me. The brownstone became my new home base. We started renovations with community volunteers and student architects. The vision, turn it into a hybrid design co-op and public arts center. We called it the Lighthouse. Every room restored felt like a piece of my soul being rebuilt. The basement was turned into a gallery. The rooftop became a garden. The old front office was repurposed into a studio. My studio, my life, once buried in concrete and lies, now smelled like sawdust and sunlight. Months passed. My father never reached out again. But one Sunday afternoon, a letter arrived in an envelope. Just folded paper, left in my mailbox. I opened it carefully. Kayla, you've turned pain into something beautiful. Your grandmother would be proud. Not everyone who keeps a secret does so to harm. Some just don't know how to face the truth. I'm one of those people. You may never know who I am. That's okay. Just know, the legacy that was stolen, you've reclaimed it. Keep going. A friendly stared at the signature. There wasn't one, just a single dried petal taped to the bottom, lavender. I stood in the doorway of the lighthouse that night, watching dusk settle over the city. Jonah came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. His head rested lightly against mine. You okay? He asked. More than okay. You did it, you know. We did. No, he said softly. You. And I believed him. For once in my life, I believed it. But as I closed the lighthouse that night, I noticed something strange. A black SUV was parked across the street. Lights off, windows tinted. I watched it. It didn't move. I turned off the last light and locked the door behind me. When I glanced back again, it was gone.